Good evening. Welcome back to the weekly docket. I'm your anchor here at the Informant market desk, and if you thought the airwaves were quiet this weekend, you weren't looking hard enough at the wires. We are closing out a week that didn't just test the limits of political theater. It tested the very elasticity of market attention. From Monday morning's opening bell to Sunday night's final scroll, the feed was relentless, frantic, and utterly unapologetic. We saw 140 posts drop into the ether this calendar week. We saw 21 bursts finalized. And we are here to tell you exactly what moved, what mattered, and who got left holding the bag when the dust settled. Let's set the stage. This was a week defined by volume and velocity. The digital landscape wasn't just noisy, it was screaming. The arc of what was posted this week tells a story of escalating tension, punctuated by moments of sheer, unadulterated chaos. We watched as the posts piled up, not in a trickle, but in a deluge. 140 distinct communications from the central figure, each one a potential spark looking for dry tinder. The bursts followed quickly on the heels of these posts, crystallizing the narrative in real time. 21 finalized bursts means 21 moments where the general public was forced to take a stand, to vote, to judge, and ultimately, to be judged by the cold, hard logic of the ticker tape. It was a week of high stakes and higher blood pressure, where every comma, every exclamation point, and every typo was dissected for market implications. Now, let's talk numbers. Because while we spend our days mocking the pundits and analyzing the pros, it is the numbers that never lie. And this week, the numbers were screaming in two directions at once. On one side, you had the stock of Donald Trump himself, DJT. It didn't just creep up, it launched. We recorded a surge of plus 4.76%, hitting the 93rd percentile of its historical range. That move jumped at the open with a gain of plus 2.32% against the prior close, which sat in the 79th percentile for overnight gaps. But that was just the appetizer. Later in the week, DJT surged another 4.07%, pushing into the 97th percentile. Then came the capstone, a final surge of 3.70%, also landing in the 97th percentile. These weren't minor fluctuations. These were seismic shifts that defied conventional gravity, driven by the sheer force of personality and policy speculation. But if DJT was the headline act, VIXI was the stage fire. You cannot look at this week's data without noting the obsessive, repetitive nature of volatility's ascent. We didn't just see one move, we saw a cascade. VIXI surged 3.89%, hitting the 91st percentile. This happened repeatedly, each time jumping at the open with a gain of plus 2.09% against the prior close, placing those overnight gaps in the 93rd percentile. The market was jittery. The market was jumpy. Every move by DJT sent ripples through VIXI, amplifying them, echoing them, multiplying them until volatility itself became the star of the show. It was a feedback loop of fear and greed, where every tick upward in Trump's stock was mirrored by a corresponding spike in the fear index. The numbers don't care about your politics, they only care about momentum. And this week, momentum was running hot on both sides of the ledger. And then, there is the burst that stole the thunder. The burst of the week was not a Trump surge, nor was it a VIXI spike. It was the eighth burst. 32 posts over 24 minutes that resulted in AMD plunging 3.06%, a move in the 98th percentile. That is an incredibly sharp decline, driven by the concentrated fury of 32 bursts in a single hour. It serves as a reminder that while we focus on the president, the market is listening to everyone else too. Speaking of listening, we have to address the voices in the booth. The spiciest pundit pair this week was a clash of titans, or perhaps a collision of egos. On the left, we had a critique so sharp it could cut glass. Oh, look at Mr. Bedminster declaring his own golf score like he's Babe Ruth on Prozac. The man thinks talent is a substitute for actual work, which explains why his policies are just fantasy fiction with better hair gel. It was poetic, it was vicious, and it perfectly captured the skepticism surrounding the administration's style over substance. On the right, Dale Buckhorn fired back with equal vigor. Dale Buckhorn here, and let me tell you, the talent is so thick in Bedminster you could cut it with a golf club. Meanwhile, the anchor for the tariff segment, and he will not be elaborating. Two very different takes, two very strong opinions, and both proving that the pundit class is as divided as ever. But here at the Informant Market Desk, we don't just watch the arguments, we measure the results. Which brings us to the centerpiece of this broadcast. The jury returns. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is where public opinion collides with market reality. And folks, this week, the courtroom was empty. There were no jury votes closed this week. That's right. Not a single verdict rendered by the public jury. No crowd tally to weigh against the market's real verdict. No aggregate accuracy figure to calculate. The jury is on break. The docket is clear. In a week of such intense activity, one might expect a wave of judgment, but instead, we saw silence from the bench. Perhaps the moves were too fast. Perhaps the volatility was too high. Or perhaps the public simply ran out of breath after 40 hours of non-stop digital warfare. Whatever the reason, the absence of jury votes is itself a data point. It suggests a market that is moving on instinct and algorithm rather than deliberation. And before we leave this segment, let us acknowledge the registry. For those keeping track of the chain, the seal for this week's head was logged as 9149 Alpha Delta 96 Foxtrot 0 Delta Bravo, a cryptic identifier for a cryptic week, marking the official entry in the ledger. Now, you might be wondering how this all fits together. How does a surge in DJT relate to a plunge in AMD? How does the absence of jury votes impact our understanding of the spiciest pundit pair? It's complex, it's messy, and frankly, it's exhausting. But that's what we do. We untangle the knot. We separate the signal from the noise. And this week, the signal was clear. Volatility is the new normal, and the market is pricing in uncertainty at a premium. And here's what our two colleagues made of it all. Stitched audio segment, colleague 1. Look, I don't care about the pros or the pundits. Look at that VIXY repetition. 5 identical lines in the top measured moves. That's not just data entry, that's market stress. When volatility hits 91 percentile 5 times in a row, you're looking at a system under extreme duress. DJT is rising, sure, but so is the cost of insurance on that rise. It's a bubble being inflated by ego. Colleague 2. You're missing the forest for the trees, or rather, the AMD plunge for the Trump surge. The real story is the 8th burst. 32 posts in 24 minutes moving AMD nearly 3% down. That's coordinated action. Someone knew something. DJT surges are theatrical, they're about optics. But that AMD drop, that's fundamentals shifting. The market believes the tariff talk is real and it's hitting tech hard. The pundit pair argued about style, but the money is voting on substance. Colleague 1. Style drives substance in this administration. You can't separate them. And look at the jury scoreboard again. No votes closed. That means no one had enough conviction to bet against the narrative. They're all waiting for the other shoe to drop, but with no accuracy aggregate to anchor us, we're flying blind. Colleague 2. We're not blind, we're just cautious. The registry chain head was logged, but the market hasn't caught up yet. Wait for it, it always does. End stitched audio, so there you have it. The week of July 27th through August 2nd, 2026, in a nutshell. We had surges and plunges, spikes and silence. We had pundits shouting from the rooftops and juries holding their tongues. And we had Donald Trump sitting in the Oval Office, watching it all unfold, his stock climbing while the rest of the world tries to figure out what on earth is happening. As we close this edition of the Weekly Docket, remember one thing. The market doesn't care about your feelings. It cares about your moves. And if you're still swinging at every post, every burst, and every pundit comment, you're not investing. You're gambling, so take a breath. Watch the numbers. Let the jury sleep. And next week we'll be here to tell you who won, who lost, and how much it cost them. Until then, stay sharp, stay skeptical, and keep your eyes on the tape. This is your anchor at the Informant Market Desk, signing off for tonight. Good night. Bedminster's golf swing and Buckhorn's cut both missed the mark on reality. Booth, what's your read on this market surge?
Oh, look at Mr. Bedminster declaring his own golf score like he's Babe Ruth on Prozac. The man thinks talent is a substitute for actual work, which explains why his policies are just fantasy fiction with better hair gel.
Dale Buckhorn here, and let me tell you, the talent is so thick in Bedminster you could cut it with a golf club. Meanwhile, the anchor for the tariff segment, and he will not be elaborating.
The booth had thoughts, but the market ignored them. DJT surged up 4.76%, landing in the 93rd percentile, not Bedminster's or Buckhorn's.